Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List Live. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry. I am so excited for today because it's something that, it's a subject that I talk a lot about in my professional life. And I've got an amazing partner for today's show that's very experienced in the conversation around app building. So I'm excited to talk to her. But before I do have to mention that we at Foundry are hiring and we're looking for folks. So if you know anybody, shoot them a message, let them know, say, hey, this crazy guy who does these live shows on LinkedIn and YouTube and stuff, they're hiring and maybe it's a cool place to work. Maybe, or you could pitch it better or not pitch it at all and just shoot them a link. That's fine. Either way, that's fine. I would enjoy it if you reached out to us and talked to us. If you hear a crunching noise, it's because my dog has a new treat. So she's going to be chewing most of the show. So let me know in the comments if it starts to get annoying. All right, let me jump in and introduce Liz. Liz, how are you today? So good for you to be here.
I'm very good, thanks. And very excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Awesome. So Liz, you're at December Labs. Tell me about what you do there and what's your role?
Sure. Maybe first at December Labs, we are dedicated to building, meaning designing and developing custom software products. That's kind of the technical way of putting it, but I really like to look at it more at, we are helping other companies, entrepreneurs, founders, building not just their companies, but, their dreams, their visions. And coming, to my role, I am the VP of Client Strategy. I'm oftentimes the one that gets to help them visualize how that might look like and how we can help. And I think that's also one of the parts that I'm most passionate about because on the contrary to, for example, just working at one company with their specific product, I actually get to talk to really amazing people every day and find out really about not just things that they're building today, but also I think some of the greatest innovations of tomorrow. So
that's
really
awesome.
Exciting place to be.
I enjoy the work too. I love and that's one reason why I've always enjoyed the agency life is the variety. It's a new conversation every day. It's fantastic. And so it's an extra special treat today to be talking to a colleague like yourself that works in the same space and experiences the same opportunities that I do as well. So let me kick it off, Liz. A lot of the times the first conversation I have with people is, I want to build an app. How much to build an app? And, I tell them, there's a lot to unpack there. Should you even build an app? Why would you want to build an application? If somebody comes to you, Liz, and says, how much for an app? What's usually what are some of your first questions what do you want to know?
As you just said, one of the first questions is really, should you build an app? Is an app the right format, the right space for that vision, for that product, for that offering that you have? And really one of the first things you always have to look at, and which I also, of course, ask in these conversations is, are there users that would like to use whatever you have to offer in an app? Because that's really where it all starts off with. If you are not building something for someone, for a user, for a customer, for a client, then you're just not getting it right from the start. Luckily, there are many different ways of validating this really from the start today. So that's the good news. But I think really getting at the core of why did you think about this? How much research have you done? At what kind of stage of your product building process are you at? And how can we leverage any learnings you might have had, up to this date? That's really where this conversation starts.
Yeah, and to your point, it doesn't seem that most of the time when people have shown up, they've done enough due diligence with their customers. And to be honest, and not to turn off people, but sometimes it's very ego driven. It's like, if we have an app, we're a real business or something. Do you find that too?
Right. Yes, or even if you think about most startups or entrepreneurs, I mean, their ideas typically come either from personal experiences or experiences within their environment. And first of all, you really have to validate if that just happened to you or if there is really a market for that outside. The conversation, of course, is very different if you already have an existing business and the app is a new part of the business, or is an add-on, or is a new ways of engaging with your customers. In those cases, the conversation is typically very different because you already have a basis of analytics, of user feedback, of an existing business that we can kind of leverage, to ideate about that new idea. So really getting an understanding of where that person is at as far as their, personal and product life cycle is really what will then define where this conversation goes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like you said, to really do that customer research, to go out and talk with customers. The problem that I've found, though, is a lot of businesses are really afraid of their customers in general, and they don't want to talk to them. They're happy sending them a form or a survey or something to say like, hey, would you, use these things? But going out and actually having the conversation can be difficult for folks because they're a little frightened because I've also seen this sort of attitude of like, I don't want to show them anything until it's done, right? And until it's done. And you and I both know that building an application is kind of like taking on a pet, or it's never done. There's constant care and feeding that needs to happen. And is that a conversation you need to broach a lot as well, Liz?
Yeah, I think there are many different parts of this relationship between a company and their customers, their clients, that kind of gets unraveled during these initial conversations. Yep. There are some companies that are really at an advanced stage, and for example, they integrate their customer success team directly with the new product development team. Or that's actually, the kind of ideal place where, people are constantly gathering feedback from users, and that gets translated into kind of the mid-short-term product strategy. Yep. But there are many cases where it's not the where this is really not what is happening, and this kind of fear of what your customers might say is again a very important conversation to have. Luckily, there are today, there are many investigations, of course, about these types of topics. And, sometimes you hear that you might just have to speak to about 5 customers or 5 to 10 customers to kind of get an idea of about, 80% of the potential problems. And the good thing is that oftentimes that is true. And so, if we're talking about validating something with users, that doesn't mean that we have to speak to each and every customer that you have. But you can actually do this in kind of, a phased way. You can, leverage different UX tactics. When I'm speaking about UX tactics, I mean, your background is, of course, also from design, but for the people that are not that acquainted with it, user experience, user interface design, and research provides today so many different tactics based on design thinking methodologies that really have almost one solution for each and every case. So the science of this is just, finding out what is the right path. But
the interesting thing is that, it's such a, it's adding like another arm of your business. To a number of organizations we talk to, the one of the first things we also ask them is, are you ready to become a technology company, right? Because it could be that they are a manufacturing company. It could be that they're construction, could be in a very, very different industry, and adding an application like this that's consumer facing, you're becoming a technology company in a way. You've got to support it. You've got to keep it, care and feed it. And because again, there's this kind of old school thinking of like, well, we'll just get it and it'll be done and then it'll be out in the world, just like you're building a house, right? Like the house is done. It's like, well, no, you got to change air filters and the water heater breaks, Right.
Right, there are going to be broken pipes, which in software development would be the bugs and everything. It's part of the life cycle, and it's not necessarily, something uncommon. Yes, I think again, the conversation is very different if you are talking to someone where the app or the tech product is an add-on, or if really the core of what they do is technology, because also, if technology is at their core, then you will probably be talking to a CTO or someone technical from their team. But sometimes when really the core of the company is non-technical in the software sense, then there's a lot more education to do. But on the other hand, there will be a different foundation when it comes to product and users, which is also a good starting point. So really the variety of these kind of conversations is, again, going back to what we initially said, one of the really most exciting parts of this.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, a lot of these organizations that maybe not are born in tech as much, they can be very siloed. And I think you touched on this, is that, maybe the CEO or somebody higher up has this big idea, but, their manufacturing arm works differently than their marketing arm, than their sales arm. And these groups are, they don't really talk to each other a ton. Now, this sort of, when you're thinking about building a consumer facing app, you got to bring all those people to the table. And that in itself can be one of the biggest challenges, is breaking down barriers inside your organization towards that goal, because there is a bit of a cultural transformation that happens as you build on tech, because it's not just, well, we'll give it to IT and they'll manage it like our ERP system, right?
Right. No, and also, again, going back to the question, is what you need really an app? Or what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because if you're building an app, you have to think about, are users going to be willing to download that app? Is there a type of repetitive use that gives you an excuse to actually be offering an app here versus, for example, a mobile responsive website or web app, however you want to call it. Or do you already have, for example, a website or a web offering, and what you're seeing is an increased demand of actually a mobile solution, or you see that actually most of your customers are accessing that platform through their mobile phones? That's a totally different starting point. So again, being able to leverage, on the one hand, quantitative data, for example, analytics of an existing platform, or qualitative insights from an existing user base, is really, it can give you a good idea of if this is the right path or not. But then even if you have decided, okay, the mobile app is my way to go, there are so many other decisions to be made. Is my user base, divided between iOS and Android? Do I have to build an app for both? Is there the possibility to build a hybrid app for both of them? And again, am I going, like, how big is this app going to be in the sense of features, in the sense of integrations with the actual phones and the hardware? So really the conversation starts really at a high level, but then gets granular very fast.
Yeah, and I think you brought up something really interesting there, Liz, because looking inward on why you should be building this app is a little bit more important than looking outward, because I have so many people that show up and say, we want to be the Uber of whatever, or the Airbnb of whatever. And they think, well, I can take these other successful sort of platforms and apply it to my company, and then boom, there's a new business thing. But what you're talking about, Liz, is looking internally and at the data and the analytics you have that speaks to a more stronger, opportunity, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And also, again, thinking about what that mobile product will be. Again, is this going to be an extension? Is this going to be something very different? Does it have to be integrated with your existing business? A good example of a company like that kind of has gone into tech that we've been working with is Inspire Fitness. They're kind of within the Peloton segment, and I mean, traditionally they were building treadmills and fitness equipment, but now they have started to pivot towards also building smart fitness equipment. And this is actually exactly this type of case where they already have a background on their fitness equipment, and they know what their consumer base likes and how that works. But now getting into, the smart fitness equipment area is something very different. How do you leverage the success from companies such as Peloton, but still maintain a unique value proposition? How do you compete with that? Because as you said, I mean, we have people every day that, ask us about, building the next Uber, the next ride sharing app, the next social network. And the question is always, so why should I be, using your app versus the ones that are already out there, where these companies have spent millions, sometimes billions of dollars building it. Yep. And you might just have a budget of, 100 or 200K. So what is it that you're offering that will really make the difference? And sometimes there are people that actually do have quite a good idea of what they're going to be doing different. But sometimes, we just go right into validating this and seeing if there is really something there.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that, because investment is something, like I mentioned at the top of the conversation. People want to know how much to build an app, And I remember recently, it's just like you were saying, somebody had approached us and wanted to build something that I think competed with Zillow in a way, right? And I was like, oh, that sounds great. And I think the estimate came in at like 1.8 million or something, right? And they were shocked. They were completely shocked. And I'm like, Zillow has 5,000 employees, and it's a
what do you think they spend?
Yeah. And this isn't even a thing that would compete directly with them. This just has a part of what they do. And so, and a big question was, are you going to hire the staff to support this, and all the other things that would go around it, to your point, the customer service side of things, the IT side of things, the research and the data. There's a whole thing behind it where people just see this sort of facade of an app, but they don't see everything that goes beyond it. Now, as you and I both know, that's one reason why in design we can prototype things at a much cheaper cost to test those ideas. And sometimes with folks, that can be a challenging conversation. Have you found that to be the case as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of education to happen. I mean, if you think about it, user experience, I think, started trending in like Google search, I think around 2014 or so. So looking at, how software has been around for a few decades now, still it's almost surprising that, user-centric design and research is still relatively new. Also, I mean, my background is in marketing, and so marketing does not work if you don't focus on the customer, on the consumer. Right. And again, it was always almost surprising to me when some years back I pivoted into tech. How there are even learnings for marketing as far as A/B testing or things like that almost seemed like something new. But as you said, the good news is that there are possibilities of validating a clickable prototype that will, cost you just decimals of what actual development would cost. And we have had actually several clients that took those initial prototypes, for example, to investors as well, and said, hey, we actually validated this prototype with a potential segment of this user base, and with that, they showed that there was actually something there. They were actually able to, show the reaction of users, while navigating through that prototype, their comments, their facial expressions, everything kind of, around that experience, which then, gave just so much more value to their product idea than, just a marketing deck would have done.
Right. And like you said, before they dumped in a ton of money into something, right, that, as soon as it goes out there, it's out of date. It needs to be updated immediately. I don't remember who said the famous quote, but no customer survives its first impact with a new product, or no product survives its impact with the customers. And the sooner you get it, and that's the advice I always give people, just like you, Liz, is the sooner I can get this in front of people and have them react to it, the sooner we can sit in a room and have tons of ideas. We can whiteboard till the cows come home. But until we can put something in front of someone and say, would you use this? And why? Then we can validate those ideas and go from there. So I think Sometimes, though, I've found that people can get a little frustrated by that because they want to be able to show up, like buying a car or something, and be like, okay, let me give you my requirements and you just go build the thing, and then I get the thing, and then we go from there. And then when we're like, whoa, let's talk to customers, let's do all this and that, they're like, oh man, that's a lot of stuff. I just want to build something. And those are usually the people we avoid working with, to be honest with you. We say, there's plenty of places out there that will take your list of requirements and just go and build whatever you like, and I can certainly refer you to those folks. But it sounds like, Liz, that you also work the same at December Labs, where you're working really hard to make sure, is this idea worth working on, not just for you, but for the customer itself?
Yeah, and also, I mean, is there? I think you're right to the point there. I mean, for us, really, when we work with someone, then ideally that we are in it for the long run. And as you said, when the initial kind of approach is really not user-centric, just product-centric in a way, then that typically is already kind of, you're kind of off to the wrong start there. And you're not understanding that UX, UI design and research is part of that development. It's not something that you can skip today, but also there's a lot of education that we do around, this not necessarily be, needing to be a huge cost impact, because that's also, we oftentimes have startups come to us and say, hey, but I'm not Google. I can't get into a room, to strategize, just leave everything else and think about the product and start talking to hundreds or thousands of users. And then it's really about educating as far as, no, but that's not needed. We actually have, everyone kind of, has their own process. And while you're, of course, typically basing it again on design thinking methodologies, you kind of start tweaking and adapting it to the typical customer or, client that you have. So in our case, for example, we've come up kind of with our own process that is really UX centric. And ideally, for any kind of UX UI design, we have up to 3 instances where we validate with users. But again, this can be a very small user base. But, kind of at the initial, the research discovery phase, validating that the customer's idea, the client's idea is, really what also users are aligned with, then validating throughout the process and validating the final product. Again, with those instances that, yes, maybe might make your UX UI phase a couple of weeks longer, you're going to be so much more stronger when you enter in development. But the other important thing is that sometimes our clients think that design and development really have to be totally separated.
Right.
But that's also one thing that is not true. On the one hand, the developers really need to be involved from the very beginning to make sure that the designers think enough outside the box to really build something amazing, but also enough inside the box to actually design something that's then viable to build within the requirements, the time frames, and the expectations of the client. And then on the other hand, the designers have to be involved during the development process to make sure that actually what they mapped out is also being implemented. So there's again so much education to do, but it's also very interesting because there are so many people that are really eager to learn about these things, and that once they start discovering how really this can make their life so much easier, they actually get really excited about this. So
Well, and we use, and I'm sure you use it too, we use the analogy of house building all the time, right? You've got the architecture, you've got the plans, you need all these things. And to folks, who are experienced, I mean, they get it. They understand that there's a process to doing something like this, right? But when you're used to, just buying SaaS products off the shelf and installing them into your business, building something custom can be a kind of a jarring experience because you're used to a customer service person coming in and saying, here's Salesforce, like just get all the users on board and we're going, we're using the thing. I find that can be a challenging thing. So let's, I think we talked about a lot of great things here, Liz, but let's back up just for a second. What are some of the things you would suggest before somebody goes to an agency like yours or mine to build an application, what are some of the things they could do ahead of time to be more prepared for those initial discussions? What would you say to that?
I mean, there are some basics such as competitor analysis, just looking kind of what's out there and maybe not just in your market, but also in others. That might give you some ideas and some learnings, because, if someone already made the same mistakes or just has had certain experiences that you can leverage and don't have to do again, then that's something, of course, good to be learning from.
Yep.
On the other hand, again, if you already have existing customers, leverage that and don't be scared about that. Sometimes it can be as easy as just sending out an initial survey, or again talking to your existing customer success team and asking them, what are the typical tickets that you're getting, what are the typical complaints, like what are you spending most of your time in, because that's also in the end a potential area of a return of investment of, for example, UX UI, when you think about really improving things that your customers are already complaining about. But when it comes again, to that initial idea of should I build that app, then there should also be just a more thorough analysis of what am I trying to offer to whom, and what is that unique value proposition? What kind of problem am I solving? Am I solving a problem, or am I creating a problem?
Right. Am I creating a problem? Right. Yeah. Because again, like I said, it is adding. It's not a passive thing you're adding to your business. It is an active, living, breathing, growing thing that.
Yeah. Am I prepared to maintaining an app? Am I prepared to understanding that, I'm not even talking about just regular updates, because the operating systems of Android or iPhones, change things and break things. I'm just talking about how is this going to evolve? And of course, you don't necessarily need to have, a 2 or 5 year plan. I mean, if you have one, then that's probably a problem, because things are going to change that much, on the tech side in 2 years. That's just time not well spent.
You can have some goals, but maybe not a plan.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always good. I always like to ask people when they come with an idea of, okay, so what's the current idea? But let's just dream, for 5 minutes. Where do you think this could go? Because that gives you sometimes insights of where they really want to go. And that sometimes changes the analysis, the response, the actual plan. Because sometimes that is where the unique value proposition lies, but not what they initially want to build. Or sometimes it's the other way around. So, I think those are just, again,
that's
some
awesome.
of those many conversations.
I know. Okay, so last question, Liz. If I'm thinking about this application, maybe I've done a little bit of that user research, those types of things. Back to your point about maintaining it. Should I plan to be working with this agency forever? Should I plan to hire people internally? What are some of the suggestions you give to folks on how, once we've added this to our business, how do we keep the life support going? What do you usually say?
Typically, and I mean, it doesn't even matter that much if you're a startup that is, starting out with this tech product, or if you're an existing company that wants to kind of add a tech product, to its array of products. Really, you're tapping into something new. So you don't know yet what is going to happen. You don't know yet how much or how quickly you will have to scale. How that need also might change, especially, after this initial validation. So, I mean, the advantages of going, initially at least with an outsourced company is definitely that you are more flexible, and that the companies such as December Labs or yours, might be able to adjust quickly to these kind of changing needs. I personally am always very excited when I see that our clients are starting to hire internally, because that means that they're doing well. I always love it when we have the possibility to keep working with them and integrate kind of with those teams, because again, sometimes they might need some extra muscle just on some area, or just for a certain amount of sprints or a certain product feature, and sometimes this becomes really a long-term relationship. But actually, yes, for me, seeing how companies really, start growing their teams internally is always something great, because I also understand that, of course, company culture and everything is something that you want to build. But I also have to say that, especially with the pandemic last year, just the, level playing field of remote work in general has really changed. And I see today so many people that just also understand that, this idea of the in-house staff is overrated in some points.
Yep.
Meaning that for certain things, you can actually, leverage global talent. You can actually get, really the perfect fit of priming, of availability, of skill set in a different way than you might on local level, where that will certainly be more limited.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a possibility for, or there are potential options for really each and every one. But yeah, it really depends on also how quickly you want to grow what you're building, right, and how well prepared you are.
Yep, speed factors into it quite a bit, right? And that, yeah, I think that's one reason why people reach out to outside agencies, just like you were saying, Liz. Is I think speed is a factor, but it's also that unique talent pool of all these different disciplines under one roof, and I explain to people all the time, it isn't just UX and development that we do. I mean, this is a cultural experience. Our team has so much experience working together as a team, building products,
right,
versus maybe your team, which, like I mentioned before, could be a bit siloed between some of these different areas. And using our team as kind of a pace car to come in and help build that, I think has been really valuable for the partners and people that we work with. It's not for everybody, but it definitely, is definitely easy to explore. And people like yourself and me, Liz, we're more than open to talk with people any day of the week about what their hopes and dreams are, right?
No, definitely. And again, I think the agency model also really thrives, when you're kind of in between that, I want to have, a staff, within the company, or, also going with freelancers, which is another option. Sure. But there you just have to be really prepared of, maybe a little bit more micromanagement, or just, people maybe not providing the same stability. So again, I mean, or even when it comes to, selecting an agency, there are design and development companies out there all over the world, and there is certainly a fit for everyone. I would say, when it comes to what we really try to do, or what makes us unique, is, that we really try to offer kind of the best combination of, having, well, for most of our clients who are US based, a nearshore team with kind of, the same time zone, cultural fit, attractive pricing, but also really holding ourselves to high standards. And again, I mean, this is something that you can only show while working with someone, how that translates then into an everyday team. But yeah, I mean, overall, if you're not in it for the passion and for building, really exciting things, then I'm very sorry for you.
Yep. It can be a very painful process. I definitely appreciate that. All right, Liz. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I really value your experience and your perspective. I think it's really valuable, and thank you for taking the time to share it with me today. Liz, if I want to know more about you and December Labs and the work you do there, where's a good place to go? Where should I connect with you?
Sure. Well, of course, decemberlabs.com will give you an idea of what we do, what we've done, where we're going, who we are. Then, of course, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always good on virtual coffees, today at least, in the times of still not being able to meet as much as we can. But then another thing you might find interesting is checking out our blog, where we have a lot of insights about all these different topics that we were talking about today, and just can share a little bit more in-depth background. Also, I mean, I always love to speak to people on podcasts, just to kind of have a more deeper conversation about these types of topics. So you can also find on our socials and on our website, a couple of other places where I'm discussing these types of topics.
That's great. Well, Liz, again, thank you so much. You guys do fantastic work, and I'm so grateful to be connected with smart individuals like yourself, and appreciate you taking the time to share with the audience today.
No, thank you very much. This was a very delightful conversation. I'm always glad to speak to people that are like-minded, that have, similar experiences, and just think we can always learn from each other. So
we got to stick together, Liz.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me and Liz today. Isn't she great? She's fantastic. Check out the work they do there. And speaking of checking out work, you can check out our work, and you can check out that we are hiring folks at foundrymakes.com/careers. Honestly, I appreciate you taking the time today. I've got some more conversations happening next week, some more live shows. We're going to be talking some more about app building and prototyping and things over the next couple of weeks. I'm really excited about it. So make sure, if you haven't, make sure you hit the likes and the subscribes and the buttons and the things, as the kids say and do over there. And I, again, appreciate you taking the time out of your day today. Have a great week. I mean, it's fantastic outside. Let's go.